For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Michael.
Morning. I'm sure I don't need to tell you that the big geopolitical events taking place in Russia, whichever way that may go, are weighing on the markets. But so far, not an enormous amount because investors simply don't know which way to turn right now. The Nikkei is up 0.1% in their trading day. Hong Kong's up about 0.4%. China mainland stocks down. Now, here's an important story, I think, as far as investment in China is concerned. Both Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan are interested in this big IPO. Now, it'll be one of the biggest of the year. This is a China IPO, and it's the company's called Syngenta. It's state-owned by Chem China, and it's about a 9 billion IPO, but both those major banks are not quite sure about the regulations surrounding that. And in a sense, what that's doing is, if something like this, which has got Syngenta has a matchless track record about being a company, what does that mean for local deals? That's the question being asked right now. Saudi is increasing its ties with China. China is sending a lot of top delegates to the Saudi, in inverted commas, Davos, which is taking place as more or less as we speak. China is the top economic trading platform for Saudi. It's also big as far as the Middle East is concerned. So therefore, there's a feeling that the ties between Saudi and China are going to be strengthened as a result of this. As far as the United States is concerned, again, the market's not really open there when the mercenary Russia aborted rebellion actually took place. So we couldn't really judge how the major stocks in the world are reacting to that. But this week is very light on economic policy, on economic numbers. So it may be there are big movements to come. We'll see. As far as the consumer is concerned, in the United States, we're looking at Walgreens Boots Alliance just to see because that's a combined healthcare and retailing group, just to see what the strength of the US consumer is. And also just a little question mark about some of the legacy media companies like Disney, Warner Brothers, Discovery, Paramount, and so on. Where are they actually going? This is the question that investors are asking right now, because Netflix, the streaming service, is beginning to thrive again. We talked about Russia. You'll be getting updates of this all the way through the day, no doubt. But the mercenary rebellion was turned back from Moscow, or turned itself back from Moscow. Various deals have been done. What does that mean for Russia? Who on earth knows at the moment? Australia is in the process of sending more weapons and military materiel to Ukraine as we speak. It's sending a $74 million package. Again, this was decided before the weekend, but it's still something which is being updated as we speak. Germany, let's turn our attention to the EU, and Germany's pushed back on the European Commission's wish to seize some of Russia's confiscated assets. The problem that both Germany and the EU are beginning to see, and this is something which has to be agreed by all the countries that make up the EU, is that the things that there might be a lot of legal problems as far as that's concerned. So this is something which Germany is pushing back on. I think you can expect more from other nations as well. As far as the United Kingdom is concerned, well, what can I tell you? Interest rates, mortgage misery, more to come. The Prime Minister has been saying in interviews over the weekend, don't get alarmed, hold steady. Well, it's all right saying that, but if the cost of living is rising, people are getting more and more restive. It could be that interest rates are between 6 and 6.25% by the end of the year. Now, again, for those of us with longer memories, that's medium for the UK. But given they've been so low for so long, this is piling on borrowing pressures, obviously, to consumers. And just a brief message about commodities. It's very, very difficult to draw a line across this. Oil is rising because of supply chain. We're going to see a shortage of grain, possibly. Other commodities as well. This has naturally pushed investors, I would have thought, to gold, but we haven't seen that right now. But as the day progresses and more news comes out of Russia, the picture will become slightly clearer. But of course, it could all change tomorrow. That's the global view.
Real quickly, the talk around town in England when mortgage holders are asking what is going to happen to our mortgages, they keep telling them to go to the bank, that there's a deal for them in the bank. What is there in that bank? Hope is not another illusion Rishi Sunak is selling to the British people. Because that's the refrain I hear. Go to your bank.
I agree.
There's a buffer for you there. But people go to the bank and they say it's all lies that are there. It's all lies that are there. There is no buffer for the British people that have been exposed to this high mortgage all of a sudden.
Yeah, there are lies. I think that people need to understand. If they all, it's like credit cards, isn't it? Really, it doesn't matter how you play it. You still owe the money. It's a question of how quickly you need to repay it. I think that all that's being offered right now is that banks are saying that there won't be any repossessions for a year. That you have a couple of months within which to change from having a repayment mortgage to an interest rate only payment. But if you do change, it will affect your credit score as far as borrowing is concerned. So yes, you're right. There is no way that the banks are going to say, okay, oh yes, sorry, you borrowed money, you can have it. It does need to be repaid. It's a question of how quickly. If that's lies, yeah, I think what we're talking about is people's expectations being too high. What they need to understand is they have borrowed the money. They will need to repay it at a certain stage. All that's being offered are some tweaks around the edges, saying that it doesn't maybe need to be paid as quickly as it would be under a repayment mortgage.
All right, Michael, I'll go to Germany. Now, for Deutsche Bank saying that they cannot guarantee full access to Russian stocks for their investors, the question now is, I mean, they're one of the banks who have come out clean to say that they are unable to guarantee the total number of shares held in Russia. What are the options now for investors? Because if I were an investor who's invested in stocks with Deutsche Bank and I'm told this kind of news, what are the options before me?
Not many. If it were me, I would avoid the area completely because you just don't know what's going to happen. It may be that Russia's infrastructure needs rebuilding, as it no doubt does. But where's the money going to come from? All the focus at the moment, as far as the G7, IMF, World Bank are concerned, as I was reporting last week, is towards Ukraine, not towards Russia. So I would have thought that nobody's going to guarantee anything as far as Russia's concerned at the moment. Whatever's happening there is an internal matter, but it is an internal matter. We have no control over it. So I would have thought investors want to stay clear, quite honestly.
Okay, Michael, just to take you back to the new Global Financial Pact Summit in France that was concluded a few days ago. Now, the developed countries have again pledged a climate adaptation fund of about $100 billion to help developing countries. Now, we keep hearing this all the time. In Glasgow, COP26, that was a major issue. In Sharm el-Sheikh, COP27, that was also a major issue. But we've not seen enough commitment. What is the guarantee that this is not, in Paris, another round of hypocrisy, pledges not followed up with action? And for how long do you think that the legacy media companies will remain in the valley? They've been there since about 2 years ago, and Netflix has been rising. Any prospect that they will get out of the valley with the fact that they have cash flow problems, mostly, and they've been cutting jobs consistently.
We should remind ourselves about Netflix. This is a streaming company, and they've altered their business model very, very slightly. The key to this is content. And who's to say that some of those legacy companies that I mentioned might not be rearranging their content to make it more, to capitalize on it more in the way that Netflix is doing with its streaming. I'd prefer to wait and see as far as that's concerned. As far as the climate change is concerned, aspiration, reality. In the middle, who knows? That's all I got to say. That's all there is to say about that, isn't it? I mean, I'm with you. Who's to say that the likes of Pakistan, as they have already done, will not come back and say that's not enough? And as shareholders, as we all are, but you are, I am, shareholders in the World Bank and the IMF, maybe indirectly, who's to say that who's going to decide who gets the money and how it will be spent and who doesn't. I mean, so you have on the one side these kind of airy things that politicians say. The granular reality of it all is really difficult.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. Now, for business updates across the African continent, Rotus Odiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning to all our viewers. We begin on the regulation side. All our news coming out of Nigeria this morning. Central Bank has included social media in its KYC, that's Know Your Customer checks for banks. So, we all know how Know Your Customer works. When you're going to open a bank account, you have to have a BVN, you have to have identification, you have to provide other items. So, they're including this in order to, strengthen their ring fencing around, terrorism financing, money laundering, and so on and so forth. And I mean, this is no real surprise here. Employers screen potential employees now using social media. So as has been said a lot of times, you've got to be careful what you say on there. Because you could be ruining your chance to get a new job. But for including this, it's modernizing the KYC process, just making sure that a total profile is put together. And and there's a generational thing here to where older people who are opening accounts probably don't have social media accounts, and you've got maybe more younger folks who this will apply to. If you don't have a social media account, doesn't matter. I mean, they'll still use the existing KYC metrics in order to check activity on potential account holders. So it's all just part of strengthening the financial system. Moving to the ports, we are seeing more and more repricing in our economy now due to the change in exchange rate. You're looking at a price metric from exchange rate table from customs. Highlighted, you've got the euro, you've got the pound, the Japanese yen, but you see the dollar there highlighted. They've raised it from 422 to 589 for clearing items that come into the country. So if we use vehicles as an example, there's a 20% levy and a 20% import duty that will be paid on a car that you're bringing in. Will use a VIN number to find the dollar value of that vehicle. A $10,000 car, which was coming in maybe at 422 before, you would pay 40% of that item to clear it. Then you've got ECOWAS stuff and other fees and so on and so forth. So they are now converting that dollar value at 589, and then you'd pay that 40% of that 589. So what was a 422,000 or so, or 4.2 million, now 5.8, right? So it's increased. And for people, if you're purchasing vehicles or any other item coming into the country, the cost of clearing now increases. Look, again, we are going through price discovery. We're going through, a shift in us being an import-dependent nation. We're going through a shift in terms of a price repricing upwards. So this is essentially going to make things more expensive if you're clearing goods, and that will probably flow down to the end user, manufacturers, and well, I mean, look. All that has to be said is that if you've maintained a price structure that was not realistic, there will be consequences for that down the line. In addition to that, we go to electricity. Abuja Disco putting out a statement, I think it was yesterday, that they will be increasing tariffs July 1st. If you take a look at a couple statements from them, it essentially said effective July the 1st, please be informed that tariffs will be going up. And why? The exchange rate, just like the ports. So, in fact, I should mention, the port is doing 589. INE window is 7 something. So, you expect a repricing for the port's clearance in the near future. Effective July 1st, 2023, please be informed that there will be an upward review to the electricity tariff influenced by the fluctuating exchange rate. The statement continues, according to the MYTO guidelines, and this is very important for everyone to know, the previously set exchange rate was 441. That was not realistic, especially if you're generating power and you know what gas and so on is priced in dollars, exchange rates and so on. It may now be revised to approximately 750, which will have an impact on the tariffs associated with your electricity consumption. Now, as I said, we talked about this on Friday. There are bands A, B, C, D, E. Basically people at the top end, the industrial folks, who use more power, they've been subsidizing those at the lower end. So the folks who will see most of this impact for this electricity tariff increase will be mostly those at the top end. Look, again, we have carried a period where we were using an exchange rate, unfortunately, that was using a subsidy, and now this shift has to take place, and this is going to be a painful period for a lot of people. But you got to do what you got to do. There's also an interesting. You folks remember Engineer Emmanuel Nora, in the president of the Premium Bread Makers Association of Nigeria. Contacted me, and this is the same thing. There's something going on here, and I'm going to hopefully get him on the Global Business Report. Maybe you can also get on the morning show to talk about this. He's saying flour millers are raising prices for what they sell to the bread makers, which is what they use to make bread. But here's something interesting. Initially, they were claiming, that is what he says, that the flour millers were claiming that the initial price they were selling the milled flour, and if you know about the value chain, these are the guys that produce it, they import parts of it, then they sell it on to the bread makers and so on and so forth. They said that the prices they were initially selling to bread makers was at the parallel market rates. And that's the reason why prices were where they are. But now they're saying they're increasing it again because of what's happened with the exchange rate. And he's saying that's not accurate. Now according to him, they're now claiming that initially the exchange rate they were using was the official rate at 4 something, and now they're repricing it to 750. So what this means, in addition to what we've seen, he was on here talking about the challenges with with wheat prices, how imports on wheat, the import prices for wheat were going up, supply was coming down. In fact, by the way, this Russia-Wagner thing, wheat futures have actually jumped a bit, so there might be some issues there with wheat. But basically, you could see another price shock with wheat because flour millers are claiming that it's more expensive. So look, Ikeja Disco, customs, wheat, everything is just being repriced upwards. That's the basic thing that needs to be understood.
And one other story I think you've probably forgot to ask is that the marketers are finding it difficult to get forex, so their prices too might go up. Ex-depot price. Ex-depot price is already 505 now, according to the Vanguard this month. That's the landing price. So petrol price too will go up very soon. So
it has to.
And poverty keeps increasing. You see, what I'm just going to say is, I understand all this free market proponent idea, Rotus. Don't get me wrong. Stop looking at me with that smirk on your face.
No, but you're part of the free market.
But
now.
all I'm going to say is, please, let the poor breathe. Let the poor breathe.
Rufai, that's not.
There's
nothing that we can do.
No. I'm going to say that again. Let the poor breathe. And these are my arguments. I was shell-shocked when I heard. And you see, this was the argument I had with you. I don't want to revisit that argument.
I mean,
but I've been vindicated. That
how?
The president came out. It was a cable news story to say that he courageously, deliberately said subsidy gone. Despite the fact that his aides told him not to mute any idea on that subsidy because it's a touchy issue, he disrespected his aide and said courage is needed in the room. And he announced courageously, subsidy gone. Is this the kind of courage we want to dangerously use to run an economy? When you don't plan for things.
But investors are responding.
No, wait, investors
are responding positively.
So we should start walking in the dark and say somebody just courageously take decisions at the expense of the pain. Yes, Mr. Rotus, investors are responding just like people are suffering. And their prospects are dwindling by the day. See, I've got nothing against free market proponents. I'm a free market proponent. You know that.
Are you sure?
Yes, I am. But I also understand that there are people that will not have amongst us. We should also balance things out to be able to cushion the effect on them. So you see all those arguments we had that day.
Yeah.
You can see I've been vindicated. The man did not plan for it.
It's the end of June. Subsidy was going to go anyway. Subsidy was going to go anyway.
Oh, yeah.
It was going to go
On
anyway.
to the next one, Ayo. We've spoken about this a number of times, and he just actually confirmed.
And he
he didn't
confirmed
confirm
this.
it.
You
It
can
was
see
obvious
now.
that he had
Rotus
planned.
defender.
It's how many days now? I think today is 1 month, 4 weeks actually, since the announcement, and we haven't had an announcement yet on the palliatives for the most vulnerable. And I think that's something that we must continue to ask for. What is the plan for the ordinary Nigerians? What have they put in place? How is the 800, the loan from the World Bank, how is it going to be disbursed? Have we received it? And how do we hope to? But let me talk about the Know Your Customer, KYC, from the banks. Rotus, I recall a few months back, you talked about an experience you had online where you were defrauded because
Yeah,
someone, and then
with
in trying to,
Salmon.
yes, in trying
Yeah.
to trace the bank account was difficult.
Yeah.
We have seen more, and as you mentioned, it's a reflection of the times, whereby you can actually gain a lot of information from social media accounts. But I want to ask you, with all the information that has been collected by banks and the different agencies that collect our data, how has that impacted, shoring up security or helping to safeguard our monies? Because we keep collecting information, now it's social media. Then the second thing was, how would they verify your social media account? So for instance, with your address, you had to bring a utility to prove that that's your address. You talked about older people not having a social media account or presence. How would they verify that? What would be the process?
Yeah, so I needs to be said that it was my own negligence when I saw salmon being priced at a very cheap price. I just went there and I should have done more checks. So I have to take responsibility for that. So yeah, exactly. So responsibility falls on the user. But we've gotten, I was able to trace, the individual that did it. It was now, it's a matter of getting court cases, permission to, freeze the account and all these other things. So that's and the money wasn't that much anyway. But the issue is that the banks are more ring-fenced. The process is safer now. The issue, though, as far as the verification of social media, again, they're just adding it to modernize the process. If your social media handle does not match your name, then there's still the existing identity, the utility bills and everything else, but they're just adding that just to modernize the process as far as it's been. But I think that this financial system is safer. A lot of the fraud that we're seeing, while there are hacks that need to be checked, personal responsibility has to fall.
KYC is a standard banking procedure. Know your customer. And we need to look at the objective in this present instance. They say they want to check money laundering, they want to check terrorism financing by taking social media details. But the catch there is that some of these social media accounts, the owners are anonymous.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you say it's due diligence to ensure verification of identity, how do you deal with anonymous details that are given? Would that not be extra bureaucracy, for the banks? Which is why it is two things are ever interesting. One is that the CBN may just be saying it realizes the value of online social media transactions, which has become quite a big community in the age of technology. But SERAP, the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, has now given the CBN an ultimatum to reverse itself on this social media approach to banking. Because SERAP says this will amount to a violation of privacy.
Yes.
This will amount to freedom, basic rights of the banking public. So we've not had the end of it yet because SERAP is likely to come back.
Yeah.
Now, everybody now, benchmarking prices, costs with Forex.
Yes.
You mentioned customs, you mentioned, even flour millers, bread makers.
Abuja Disco.
Where landlords are doing the same thing too, I hear. Even if the house was built in 1970, what you will hear is that, Forex has gone up. What you have not told us, maybe we will find out, is what rates the landlords associations will adopt. Housewives too are talking about Forex. and that's understandable, I guess, because prices have gone up, in the market. In fact, I hear some other professionals are also talking about Forex. Why are you laughing? I've not mentioned anybody.
There was an index I was going to use to track those professionals, but people would have started asking me questions.
However, what I find interesting is that Abuja Disco, and I hope other discos will follow the example. Abuja Disco is advising that you can buy, a bulk before the end of the month, before July 1.
Right.
But the question is, how many people have enough savings to be able to buy enough electricity input till the end of the year? In any case, we'll all come back to that reality.
Indeed.
So we get impoverished, and in Nigeria, unfortunately, when things go up,
they never come down.
They don't always come
That's
down.
another thing free market people should understand.
They don't always come
They
down.
don't always come down. When
Thank you
things
so
go
much,
up, free market people should
Thank you for
understand
your
it never
time.
comes down.
Thank you very much, Rochi.